Hey guys, what's up there? Humanentity4, long time no see. I know I basically say that every video because I never really record anything anymore, but I'm coming at you this time with my January 2014 format post Legacy of the Valiant Evol deck. And this deck I think is a really good contender for the format because the format's a bit slower this time around. Everything with Evilswarm to Constellar to Bujins tends to like to sit on one monster, and I've made this deck sort of an anti-meta-ish deck that can compete with that. And I've always loved Evols. It's one of my favorite decks. I pimped it out with all the stuff from Legacy of the Valiant. I know for my usual subscribers, I've basically sold off everything in the past few months, and I have essentially 3 decks left, which is this one. I have a fun, Raveneless Dragoonity deck, and I run a Herald of Perfection deck as my main deck. So then that's basically the 3 decks I have. Everything else is basically just like parts of old decks or like became things in the binder. But you guys don't really care about that right now. What you care about right now is getting into this deck profile. So, the heart and soul of any Evol deck is Evoltile Westlo. And Evoltile Westlo is your best friend. He says that when he's flipped face up, you can special summon one Evolsaur monster from your deck. And you want to get him out really early. He gets all the combos started. So you basically try to set him first turn, 1900, beefy defense, and then they run into him, you flip him face up, special summon something like a Diplo, and pop one of their spell traps and try to exceed next turn. But everyone loves Westlo. And also, we can abuse him with Wind-Up Zenmaister, but we'll get into that when we get into the extra deck. Next, to Evoltile Najasho. He says that when he is tributed, you can special summon an Evolsar from the deck. And we have 2 ways of tributing off Najasho. One is enemy controller, so you play enemy controller, sack Najasho, take one of their monsters, and then you get a special summon and exceed from there, which is nice. Or we have a card called Evo-Force, which I'll go into more detail when we get to the card, but essentially allows you to plus because you get the special summon 2 off it. And last of the Evoltiles is one Odonto. Odonto says that when he is normal summoned, you can special summon an Evolsaur from the hand, unlike the others that refer to the deck. He's good for making dead hands live again, because you're going to draw your Evolsars like Cerato, Diplo, Vulcano, and it sucks when you draw them, because they need to be in deck. So when you special summon them from the hand, they get their effects, and it makes the hand live again. On to the Sars. You have 2 Evolsaur Cerato. He is essentially your Laquari of the deck for Gladiator Beast. Evolsars work a lot like Gladiator Beasts. But Cerato says that when he's special summoned, he gains 200 attack, making him a 2100 beater. And when he destroys an opponent's monster by battle, when he was special summoned, you get to search for an Evoltile from the deck and add it to the hand. So he allows you to add Westlos to the hand before you exceed with him, which is always good. And he also, just 2100 beats is always nice. Next, we run 2 Diplo. Diplo is like your bestiary. He pops spell traps. And he's good for early game, getting rid of your opponent's forces before you go and make Laggia/Dolkka. And last of the Evolsars is 3 Vulcano. 3 sometimes gets a bit cloggy, but it's worth it because you always want to make sure you have one in deck, because when he is special summoned from the deck, you can target an Evolsar in your graveyard and special summon it, which basically means instant exceeds. And we have ways of making him live again, such as Odonto, or the last monster of the deck, which is Blaster. So it works out in 3. And like I said, last but not least, Blaster. Blaster is very important for the deck, even if he's only at 1 now. He's 2800 beats, which is probably the largest monster this deck can make. You can discard him in a dead fire monster in hand and pop a card of your opponent's that's really bothering you. And of course, the banish 2 fires and special summon. Onto the spells. 3. Evo-Diversity. Evo-Diversity is essentially your Rhoda. And Diversity can get you anything from an Evol Light to an Evolsar. It can get you a Cerato, it can get you a Westlo, it can get you a Najasho. It essentially searches everything but Blaster in the whole entire deck. Next, we have 3 Evo-Force. Evo-Force is the card I mentioned before with Najasho. He says that you can tribute an Evoltile monster to special summon an Evolsar from the deck. So he's good for getting rid of dead Westlos or Najasho or Odonto, and with Najasho you can special summon 2. One for Evo-Force's effect and one for the fact that Najasho is tributed. 2 Pot of Duality for consistency reasons. 2 enemy controller. Again, another way to tribute Najasho, as well as having a defense for when your opponent's going to ram Laggia or Dolkka, because they don't have the highest amount of attack points. As well as you can steal your monsters for exceeding. 1 mind control, again, steal your opponent's monsters to exceed with them is always a good thing. 3 Forbidden Lance. Forbidden Lance is great because it's versatile, and in the sense that when your opponent's attacking you, you can drop their attack by 800, or use it on your Laggia or Dolkka or whoever else you have to save them if you don't want to waste like Laggia's materials. So always a good thing. And the card that makes this deck really good this format, in my opinion, from all my testing on doing my work, is 3 Kaiser Colosseum. Yes, 3 is probably a bit overkill, but you really want to draw it early game. And Kaiser Colosseum essentially says that your opponent cannot control more monsters than you control at the time of this card's activation. Like if you have 1 monster out and you play Kaiser Colosseum, they can't play more than 1 monster as long as you control that 1 monster. If you play more monsters, they can play more monsters. But a great turn combo is playing Kaiser Colosseum and setting Westlo first turn. And there's really not much they can do, because they can only summon 1 monster, so they're not going to be able to special summon anything big first turn. And so which means they're not going to have anything big enough to hit Westlo. You special summon Diplo, pop their back row, normal summon a dead Evolsaur in hand, or whatever you want to do, and bring out a Laggia, and then you essentially have Kaiser Colosseum and Laggia locking them down. Now they can only play 1 to 2 monsters depending on if they destroyed Westlo. So Kaiser Colosseum is really good, and you can just sit on Kaiser Colosseum and Laggia for a very long time to annoy your opponent. On to the traps. We have our triplicate staples, Solemn Warning, Bottomless Trap Hole, and Compulsory. They're all really good, they're all needed. Our 2 Fiendish Chains, because you can't always have Dolkka out, and effects are something that really hurts this deck, so you want to make sure to take care of them and nip them in the bud as fast as possible. Your 2 Dimensional Prison. Anyone who has played Evols before knows that Dimensional Prison is essentially a staple of an Evol deck. It's been in most Evol decks for a very long time, and when your opponent's about to go ram your Laggia or Dolkka because they're weaker than most of the boss monsters of the meta, you're going to need something to save them, and D-Prison is that card. And last but not least for our 40 card deck is 2 Dark Bribe. Dark Bribe is more of a personal tech choice for me. You can run MSTs because I do not main MST in this deck, but I just like Dark Bribe for those cards when you're in a really bad situation, because normally, even though they get to draw 1, it's still better than what was going to happen, like Dark Hole or anything else that they're going to do. Onto your extra deck, from now upgraded from Legacy of the Valiant stuff. 1 Chimeratech Fortress Dragon. This is something I've always personally run in all my extra decks. Machines are still a thing between Giras and Karakuri, Machina, all those things. And I side Cyber Dragons too, so it makes Chimeratech live. But I always like Chimeratech to just deal with them. No one ever sees it coming. And it's only 1 extra deck space, so why not? We have double Laggia. Now most people might question me on this because Laggia tends to be run in triplicate. And honestly, I cannot think of a situation where I've needed 3 Laggia in a very long time. So I've bumped it down to 2 to make room for some of the new support. 2 seems to be working just fine. If you really need 3 Solemn Judgments to win the game, then you're probably in a pretty bad situation. Double Dolkka. While Laggia is essentially a Solemn Judgment, Dolkka is essentially a Effect Veiler. You can attach a material to negate and destroy when your opponent activates an effect. And Dolkka is really good too. Abyss Dweller deals with all the Mermails and anything else that activates in the graveyard. Gagaga Cowboy, which is essentially stable. Burn. Diamond Direwolf gets rid of threats that you can't handle. Here's a new card, number 101, Silent Honor Arc, which is a pretty cool card. And he is basically the new Maestroke, because he does everything Maestroke does, but better. Because he can detach a material to save himself if you want to use him that way, and just use him for 2 materials in that extent. Or you can detach the 2 materials, steal one of your opponent's monsters, and equip it to him. That was special summoned in face-up attack position, so you can eat their boss monsters, which is always really good. Next up, we have Evilswarm Excition Knight, and he's amazing, as everyone who knows Legacy of the Valiant does. And you can detach the material if your opponent controls more cards on the field and in their hand than you control on the field and in your hand, then you can nuke the field, which is great. And in return, he can't attack this turn. And he's 1900, so it doesn't really matter. 1 Lavalval Chain. Lavalval Chain is a new addition to this deck, along with obviously new Legacy of the Valiant cards. And the reason is that you really want that blaster to finish off late game. So what you can do is you can send blaster to the graveyard directly, which is great. Or you can set up next turn by taking certain cards and putting them on top of your deck. Like, I don't know, Westlo or something. It's really situational, but when you need it, it comes in handy. 1 Daigusto Emeral. I believe you're only running approximately 14 monsters in this deck, so if you run out of all the Evolsaurs quickly, like Diplo, Cerato, all of them, it's not really going to be good when you're trying to special summon from the deck. So Emerald fixes that situation by sticking them back in there. 1 Wind-Up Zenmaister, and he is the way we abuse Westlo that I mentioned early on in the video. Basically, you detach a material to set a monster that is face up, and then in the end phase, it flips up, and that's basically all you need to do with Westlo. So, Westlo, Zenmaister, detach, flip, during the end phase, flip face up, get his effect special, and go off next turn. 1 Evilswarm Ouroboros. He is what we do when we have 3 level 4 monsters, and he's a lot easier to special summon than one might think. You do get 3 out pretty consistently, and he just does so many different versatile things that I don't know what I'd do without him. He gets over so many things. Between bouncing monsters, making your opponent discard, and banishing cards from the graveyard, he's one hell of a mech guy. And last but not least, 1 Giga-Brilliant. Giga-Brilliant is there because there are going to be situations where you exceed rank 3 when they couldn't run over your Westlo and you draw more Westlos, etc., etc. Giga-Brilliant's good because he boosts the attack of everything on the field, and because your Laggia and Dolkka are pretty weak, as well as most of your other rank 4s, he gives them that needed power boost, making Laggia turn into 2700 beats much better than before. So that's the deck. Please tell me what you guys think about it. I'm glad to be back to the YouTube community. I know it's a bit of a longer video. Herald of Perfection deck should be coming up, but I first got to decide if I want to run the Agent version or the Spirit version in this format. And that's really about it. Human 34, sign it.